Hello, everybody. Surprise live. Um, you know, had a few things was thinking about, and a few things I saw today when I got home from work, um, and then something else that Hollywood told me. So, those of you who have been paying attention for the last couple of weeks, you might know who I'm talking about, Hollywood. But anyway, that's Ripper. He's he's down in Florida right now, so he's you know probably going to have something interesting, I imagine, maybe tomorrow. But he did manage to tell me. He told me something interesting about tomorrow, and that tomorrow is Don Lewis's birthday. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. But he's down there in Florida. He's looking into some things, and so it's going to be interesting. So I expect we'll have some very interesting stuff coming from Ripper, or Hollywood, as I like to call him, very soon. How's it going, Jamie? You late? Yeah. Sorry. Hi, Jane. Hi, TTM fangirl. Hello, Mystical Jinxie. Hey, Jinxie. So I mean, obviously that's pretty cool. I got permission to talk about it here on YouTube, but anyway, so it's cool. I mean, I'm really looking forward to what Johnny's going to come up with, or what he might find, or what he may, what he may find while he's down there. So that's actually going to be pretty darn interesting. Obviously we're coming off of Mammothon. Some of you may have seen today I uploaded my interview with Steve Moore, and which is interesting because sorry folks, hold on. So where was I? Anyways, so we just came out from Mammothon. I uploaded the video with Steve Moore. I took the clip of me talking with Steve Moore, uploaded that today, so that it's easier to share it, obviously, for people. So he, okay, let me try this again. So I uploaded that clip so that it's more easily shareable. Just that clip. So, if we want to tweet it at Governor Evers or whatever else. So I wanted to upload the clip of Steve Moore by itself. Going to be working on uploading the segment with Sydney. And then I'm going to be uploading the segment with Dr. Silkman, obviously, where Dr. Silkman and I talk about, Brendan. So, and then I'll eventually will upload from my final segment as well. I understand Andrew Whitehead is planning to do the same. He wants to pull out certain bits of Mammothon and upload it as a shorter video, which is a good idea, just because it gives people a chance to get right to the part of Mammothon that they're maybe looking for and stuff like that. So that's what's good about it. So it's like I said, tomorrow is Don Lewis's birthday, so that's pretty cool. And Tiger King, I mean, I find it interesting because I watch everybody commenting about it, and I obviously on it, I see the way Ripper went. Ripper watched it, and, well, he kind of has the same kind of sensibilities as I do, because I watched it and I was outraged about two things. Number one, I was, fairly certain that some kind of foul play befell Don Lewis. Something happened to him and it was completely unexplained. At the very least, that was true. And number two, Jeff Lowe. Okay? Regardless of what you think of Joe Exotic, and I know a lot of people love him. They think, a lot of people I know they think Joe Exotic is great. But if you don't mind, I have a slightly different opinion of Joe Exotic. Joe Exotic is, a funny character, I guess you might say, but they showed glimpses in there of how terrible he was prior to handing the place over to Jeff Lowe. But so he, I have my issues with Joe Exotic because he was fairly brutal. In fact, it was the unexplained, euthanized cats or dead cats that had been shot in the skull that were buried on the property. Those, it was mainly those things that he was getting in trouble for. It was his own actions and things he shouldn't have been doing. So, but where I do have an issue and where I will speak up for Joe Exotic, and I know some of you out there who love Joe Exotic are wanting to pummel me. I'm sorry. But where I will stick up for Joe is I do not believe Joe was hiring that stupid idiot that Jeff Lowe brought in, the supposed hitman, that guy. I do not believe Joe was trying to pay that guy to go kill Carol Baskin. I don't. I believe it was a completely fabricated event, and basically a non-existent event. It never happened. It was never going to happen. All of the pieces of it were brought in by Jeff Lowe to gaslight Joe. That's what it is, right? I mean, look at how much he's a con man, and look at how much he's in control of the hitman and the zoo, and you understand, right? I mean, Jeff Lowe completely manipulated that situation, and I cannot believe the federal prosecutors allowed themselves to be duped by him. I mean, he was totally duped. I mean, they were totally duped by him. He's the guy that orchestrated the whole damn thing. He was the guy that was making it all happen. He was doing all the planning. He brought in the hitman, right? It's him at the heart of it. And they give him immunity so that they can pin it on Joe. And I'm like, wait a second. Look, Joe may have done some things wrong that he needs to answer for, but that's not one of them. And that was my other big takeaway from the Tiger King. So, what do you guys think? Let's check the chat for a second. What do we got? The great MAM weekend. Yeah, it was. Mammothon was an absolute success. It was great. Hi, Rhonda. Whoops. Let's see. Joe Exotic may be nice, but he is not so nice. LOL. Yeah, he, like I say, he has a darker side. I mean, he's kind of a good charismatic character, but I mean, he had a darker side. You know what I mean? The documentary kind of presented him as lovable, even though they did show his flaws a bit. But, I mean, Joe is not completely, innocent in this. I mean, those buried, cats they found with gunshot wounds to the head that were not explained or couldn't be explained were a problem, and that's why Joe was getting in trouble, or part of it. And then it was like this weird thing, like where they're getting the murder for hire thing just to make it all a little more whatever. I mean, it was just, to me, the whole murder for hire thing is completely bogus. It was never a murder for hire. It was complete smoke and mirrors by Jeff and his little buddy, his little henchman, the supposed hitman. See, not on Joe Exotic bandwagon at all. Some interest in Carol Baskin if she did it. Right, if in fact she was involved with Don Lewis's disappearance, certainly that's certainly of interest. Let's see here, Jeff Lowe is shady for sure. Agree 100%. Right on. Agree. Right on. So, but don't think he tried to hire anyone to kill CB. But He is no choir boy. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's, you guys are on the page with me. I'm like, he may have done some things wrong, but hiring a hitman to murder Carol Baskin was not one of those things. And that's just the straight up. That's how it is. Right? And let's go through why. Why do I feel that way? Why do maybe you guys feel that way? We feel that way because we know that Joe Exotic always was a big mouth and was always talking about taking out Carol Baskin and talk. He was like a little chihuahua. That's what he was like. But he was all talk. He was a little dog with a big bark. That's what he was. And why do I say that? Why do I say that? Because in every opportunity where he was presented an option or presented with the opportunity to pay a hitman to do it, he never produces the money. He never did. The federal prosecutors tried to set him up, sending in an agent with the confidential informant, sending in an agent to work with them and talk to Joe and set up a murder for hire on Carol Baskin. And they set it all up. Joe obviously talking, right? But when it came down to it, Joe never contacted that who he thought was a hitman, but it was actually an agent. He never contacted that guy to pay him and initiate it. Joe never, ever did that. He never went to that point. And then suddenly in this situation that's mainly orchestrated by Jeff Lowe, and it's involving his own guy, and it's, I mean, pretty much all of the aspects of it are under Jeff's umbrella, right? And then we ask ourselves, okay, so Joe was in the office one day going, yeah, I wish somebody would kill that Carol Baskin, right? Right? Okay, so everybody starts to have the normal banter where they sit there and talk crap about Carol Baskin because that's what they did there. It was like their little pastime. It was like what they did for fun or patter or banter. That's just what they did. Now, is talking about killing somebody, you know, a very wholesome thing to do? No, it's not. But it's not illegal, right? But then who actually goes into the computer and starts Google Earthing Carol Baskin's bike route, house, and all that sort of stuff, and starts calling people over so that they can start talking about where they could shoot her from? Who was doing that? That was Jeff Lowe. Again, when it comes to the actual planning and the actual, like, you know, working it out, how it's going to work and what's going to happen, it's all Jeff. It's all Jeff, the con man. So that's, to me, those were my two big takeaways. Obviously, yes, disappearance of Don Lewis and whether or not Carol Baskin was involved. And number two, Jeff Lowe and the fabricated and completely fake murder for hire that Joe's serving time for. Or at least he has some time on his sentence for that. So, anyway. Okay, so agree. He was all talk because of Baskin and her desire to drive him bankrupt and get his tigers. Right. After you are done here, you should go to Danny Mendez channel on YouTube. He has a call with Joe Exotic from prison from 2018. And there is screenshots of Jeff Lowe admitting he was setting up Joe. Oh, really? That's interesting. All right, David Moore, I'm going to have to go check that out. But how could you blame him? She's a nasty person. She's, well, you know, she is who she is, whatever. I mean, I made this clear in the videos that I made originally about Tiger King, like where the first, you know, I went live after the first 3 episodes, right? Because I was like, oh God, I felt like there was already a lot I wanted to unpack before I even got to the final 4 episodes, right? And I was actually probably halfway through episode 4 when I was, yeah, to be honest, I was about halfway through episode 4 when I decided to go live. So I went live on those first 3 episodes, and my main takeaway on the first 3 episodes was, do you guys remember? Does anybody in the chat remember what my big takeaway was on the first 3 episodes? I'll just wait and see if it pops up here. Because, yeah, the first 3 episodes, I was just tripping. I was just I'm trying to get my head around this community. And I don't know, I feel like the documentary was a little bit odd because it was, well, something Amanda Knox pointed out on her podcast that I want to bring up, but I want to bring it up later. But it's just the way these documentarians, I guess you might say, approached this. And do you remember? They're introducing everybody, they're introducing Doc Antle. And you remember when they were going to see him and they were showing him where he was trying to ask them what direction they wanted and stuff. And so they were showing bits of him like that and kind of showing him to be a little clownish. And there was just weird things, about it. And it was just the whole thing. Let's see. Anybody remember? Where Joe Exotic actually was actually scared of the tigers. He only went in the cage when one tranquilized other white one is blind. Okay. So, anybody guess yet? Anybody? No. Let's see. Hey, down. No. What's the question? I missed it. So, all right. My big takeaway after the first 3 episodes was these freaking tiger people are nuts. They're nuts. They're crazy. They're absolutely bonkers. And it was during that live that I was talking about how it was just so crazy. And how I was having difficulty getting my head around it. And as I was talking about the way Doc Antle was creating his own little harem there, and how Joe was turning straight men gay for him, and how, and then Carol Baskin, who thinks she's better than everybody else, but she's not, because she's got people paying her to come work for her. That's the kind of that these tigers had a very, very big pull on people. And so Allie Apperson popped up in my live chat, and Allie Apperson put her finger right on it. And she said, yeah, those big cats are like a narcotic. So those people that love those big cats and who get to go work with them and develop relationships with those big cats, like Doc Antle's wives and all that sort of stuff, right? They love that feeling. It's just like a narcotic. It just fills their brains with dopamine, or whatever you want to call it, but it gives them the feel good chemical, right? And so it's no different than a narcotic. And I was like, that's exactly right. That's what it was. And that's what the first 3 episodes are, is laying out how these big cats and the people who are, just all about these big cats are they're addicted. It's like an addiction to narcotics. You know what I mean? So that was my big takeaway from the first 3 episodes before I went beyond. Let's see. It's a really crazy community and all do exactly the same, but Joe was into turning guys to be gay. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. He was doing that because of the pull that those animals had. Because look at what happens to is it Chuck Finley, his first husband? I mean, what happens when he decides to leave Joe? What happens? He goes right back to a woman, right? When he decided he was done with the zoo, he decided he didn't want Joe anymore. He ran off with a woman. So that tells you that it's the pull that these animals have on the people that allow guys like Joe or Doc Ansel or Carol Baskin to have this power over these people who are desperate to come and hang out and touch and play with and, you know, whatever, the big cats, right? So girl that lost her arm, yeah, right. Let's see, that's why Don disappears. He was going to take the Tigers to Costa Rica, and Baskin didn't want to go. You're right. I mean, that's the whole problem with it all, right? Because Don was getting ready to move the operation to Costa Rica, where he would have less regulations, and he would be able to breed however he wanted, with whatever, you know, how, you know, which, you know, however much, you know, however many he wanted or whatever he would have. He just wanted to be able to do what he wanted. And in Costa Rica, that's what he would have been able to do. But Carol certainly didn't want to. She didn't want to go to Costa Rica. She wanted to stay right there in the United States and lord her big cats over everybody and have people paying her to come work for her. Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, you know, those are my big takeaways from Tiger King. You know, you know, myself, I just, yeah. I mean, Joe Exotic, like, another way, you know, Joe Exotic was probably not well loved by the people at the zoo there, that it was mostly they probably tolerated him kind of thing. Is the part of Tiger King when he's in the cage and he's recording one of his, you know, what's it called? One of his campaign ads or whatever, right? And he's in the cage with the tigers, and he's going and he's talking or whatever, and he's walking with his cane, and suddenly one of the tigers is snipping around at his foot, and he kind of just shoos the tiger away and kind of walks a little different direction or whatever, and then the tiger comes back and starts snipping around his foot again, and he kind of I think he kind of pushed the snout or whatever, and when he did that, the tiger gripped onto his foot and was about starting to drag him. So, you know, and then another one of the tigers came up, or lions came up with I think those were lions, whichever ones. I think it was lions actually, but anyway, another one of the lions came up, started coming up towards his head, right? And so he was hitting one of them and trying to get it off his foot, and he eventually did. But I think he actually had to pull the gun out and fire it to get it to release his foot. And then once he fired it into the air, it let his foot go and jump back a little bit. The one that was coming towards his head jumped back a little bit, and then he was in this whole crazy situation where he was trying to back his way out of there without, threatening to shoot and shooting at the tigers to get them to back up, but without shooting them to get out of there. And not a single person comes to help him. Everybody there was willing to let him get torn apart by those lions. That's what that scene told me. Okay? And so that'll tell you that Joe he was, as much as it looks like people are looking up to him or admiring him, I guarantee you it's not. It was more, I guarantee you it had to be a toleration. They were tolerating him. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, the way nobody came in there to help him, yeah, that was pretty wild. Maybe Joe turned. That seems like a joke in bad taste, Jamie. Let's see here. better hush the pretty mouth before I make you my next wife. F. Carol Baskins. Let's see. Either way, happy belated birthday, brother MLR. And oh yeah, it was Jamie Hart's birthday, folks. So happy birthday, Jamie. You would get married again. Never learn. Let's see. That call I was telling you about earlier, you see screenshots when one of the staff admitted that they sprayed perfume on the shoes. Yeah. Maybe that is it. I mean, it could be the hormones in the perfume that give it the scent could have enticed them, possibly. But regardless of whether it was caused by something being put on Joe's shoes, the fact of the matter that nobody comes in to help him, to me, that says it all. I mean, Joe, I bet you Joe had a nice brown patch in his underwear when he backed himself out of that cage. When he finally got out of there, I'm sure he had a nice little mud city in his underwear. I'll tell you. Joe Exotic was 100% set up, no doubt. For the murder for hire, I agree. For the murder for hire, Joe was that. I mean, well, for me, the murder for hire never was. It was all a smoke and mirrors thing by Conman Jeff. That's my opinion. So we talked about that, and or when I talk about that, it's like I was, on Twitter today and saw somebody talking about Tiger King and stuff, and I was, this person's wrongfully convicted, and I was thinking about the wrongfully convicted, folks that we saw during Mammothon. There was Doreen, who was on with Tracy, and I'm sorry, but the name of her son is escaping me, but she was the one that had the Christmas tree that she wasn't taking down and everything, because it was a symbol of hope for her and everything, and it was brilliant when Ricky Kidd came in, because Ricky Kidd followed Doreen. And so, like, the first thing he was saying when he came in was, he was like, "Oh, you don't take that tree down. You don't, that tree stays up." And all that sort of stuff. And he was like, because he was trying to reinforce her, because she had been saying how she felt like sorry. All right. She felt like people were, you could tell she maybe felt a little bit embarrassed about it, like when people come over and still see the Christmas tree up and stuff. So Ricky noticed that. And so he immediately came in and he reinforced her, and was just like telling her that tree doesn't come down and that sort of stuff. And it was pretty awesome. See, listen to Sunny Govan Radio on. I have not. I don't know what that is. Who owned GW Zoo? When Jeff told Joe to take the three, Jeff did. FB group, people are trying to find the truth of Dawn. Absolutely. Just wait for what's to come. Just wait. I feel bad I missed the beginning about the tree and made a joke about it later. Oh well, that tree was something that was very special to Doreen, and so yeah, that was great that Jason Kidd came in and immediately reinforced her. Okay, I really gotta ignore my phone at this point. Okay, um, so Ricky Kidd comes in and immediately reinforces her. Now, the one thing I would point out, Doreen's son was still in prison. I'm from what I was gathering there. So, but Ricky was actually exonerated, and then after Ricky, there was a gentleman named Jason Strong, and then even Ripper had Adam Brazil over on his channel later, and there was a common theme that you were hearing from these gentlemen. You know what I mean? There was a they all were keen to mention the fact that yes, we've actually been officially exonerated and noticed by the system as exonerated and everything, and they were pointing out though, but when it doesn't translate to the like the actual real world at large, because now when they're out and about, there's people out there that still only remember the media and press about it and everything and think that they're still a killer or think that they're still guilty, and so they have to constantly fight this battle where they're half vindicated. They're stuck somewhere in between, where they being guilty and being innocent. They're like stuck in some crazy limbo in between. You know what I mean? And it sucks. And that's why it's so bad when our system gets it wrong, especially when we got the data coming out of the Innocence Projects to inform us that we're getting it wrong and what we're doing wrong. How long is it going to take, right? But there was that theme from the wrongfully convicted gentlemen that were on during Mammothon, and it's the same for another wrongfully convicted person. Somebody you guys know I've been talking with, following their podcast and following them on Twitter, and that's Amanda Knox. Well, yesterday she tweeted about the Tiger King. And she had tweeted basically saying, well, she was number one, she tweeted her podcast first off, and where she was talking about Carol Baskin, and it was actually, I went, I clicked on it, listened to it. It's actually fairly short. It's actually I think it was about 8.5 minutes or something like that, or 9 minutes. But she basically offers some of her thoughts about Tiger King after watching it, and that sort of stuff. The FB group for Don Lewis, I believe Nosy Wren might be able to help you out with that. TTM fangirl. So it was interesting. I went over and listened to her podcast, and what Amanda's thoughts were on Tiger King were essentially that she was concerned about Don Lewis and Carol Baskin, just like anybody else, right? That the situation was concerning, and she didn't like the look of the altered power of attorney or whatever, and so that all that stuff was she didn't like seeing that stuff, and so she acknowledges that Carol Baskin she acknowledges that she should be suspected, and that at least the suspicion is warranted. But what she was saying in the podcast is that she was saying, but that doesn't mean we rush to judge her and say she's guilty, and make all kinds of memes about her and deem her guilty and convict her in the the court of public opinion, right? And when we don't really have all the facts, we don't have the proof to show it. And so that's what Amanda was saying. Okay. Right. and it was interesting because when I got home today, I had sent Amanda the video of me and Steve Moore. I'd sent that over to her and everything, and she had answered back, oh, thank you and all that and stuff. And so when I got home, I went over and checked her Twitter and saw that she was tweeting about Tiger King again, only she was tweeting about the press, twisting her words and using her celebrity to their advantage in a kind of in a bit of an underhanded and negative way. And it sucked. And I was going to show you guys a bit of it, if you don't mind. Here's one of them. All right. Just trying to get it queued up here, folks. So I think we'll start with the first one. All right, let me screen share this. All right. So after what I've just told you of what her podcast was actually about, right? Here you have the Daily Mirror, who honestly, I don't know that they actually listened to the podcast, because nothing that's in that headline is actually true. Nothing. No. Tiger King's Carol Baskin not guilty of killing husband, says Amanda Knox. That is not what she said. That wasn't what she said. And you know what that is, right, folks? That's the press using Amanda's, notoriety in a negative way like that. Because they know that saying Carol Baskin is not guilty is unpopular. They know that. And so they say they claim that that's what Amanda said, but it's not, because Amanda said she felt that the suspicion was warranted. She wasn't on board with everybody's rush to judgment. You see, and that's a difference. And so to put these words in her mouth, you know why they're doing it? It's because she's wrongfully convicted. It's because they can. It's shocking. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's called the Don Lewis Cold Files Facebook group. For those that might be interested, you can go check that out on Facebook. So that's where, Ripper and Nosy and a few other folks here in the chat get together to look into the case. So if anybody's interested, you might go over and check that out. You're asking me what I think of Rubber Ducky's channel? I like Rubber Ducky. I think Rubber Ducky is, pretty straightforward, pretty down to earth, or at least very classy in the sense that she speaks softly. She doesn't tend to get into a whole lot of controversy, but she has a great following, people following her, and she puts out content that's of interest. I mean, I like Rubber Ducky. Her and I, whenever she appears on my lives, we always, say hi to each other and all that sort of stuff. We have a mutual respect. So I have nothing against Rubber Ducky. I thought you had Edinburgh admin staff that knew about Sunny Govan Radio is on Google Play to download. You not downloaded yet? Shocking. Well, Andrew, I'm the last 2 weeks I haven't been on Scottish Independence, so that would be why I probably don't have that from Edinburgh. But give it time. give it some time, and I'm maybe this weekend, and but I put off all Scottish independence stuff until after Mammothon. So yeah, the readings of Queso I thought were good. That was something she did, because that means you can just turn your phone on and set it down, and instead of having to sit and read Queso, you can just listen to it as it's read, and you can pick up large chunks of Queso in that way. So I always thought that was a good idea, and was glad she did that. So that was another great idea that Rubber Ducky had. So so and this wasn't the worst, or at least this wasn't the only one, because after I saw this one, I went and looked in on her Twitter and found this one. So you see this, folks? You see this right here? Yeah. That is a mainstream, the Sun, mainstream media, using Foxy, using that term. That was a highly offensive term that was used to brand her as a guilty individual in Italy. This is not a fond memory for Amanda. They are using that term for shock and to refer to a time when Amanda was believed to be guilty herself. So they're using that term in a very, very pointed way, and in a very negative way, right? So that's what that is. You're going to have another link with the Scottish We Last again. Maybe come over to Scotland 6 months. Hey Andrew, I'll tell you what. You want to talk to her and find a subject we can talk about. I almost had We Scottish Lass on my channel at one point. We were gonna have a chat, but she suddenly decided she wasn't into that topic anymore, and and so, or at least she decided she was putting it on the back burner for now. So since she decided that, it's been harder for me to even, get her to talk to me. It's really been kind of odd. So, but I still tweet to her, and I still say funny things to her on Twitter. Who knows? Maybe one of these days, her and I will get together for a live. But maybe you suggest to her. I don't know. Maybe. If she's willing, I'm willing. Her story reminds me of broke down palace, but with murder, not drugs. That's what happens when the MSM can operate with impunity. Well, you should see Marty. Let's see if can I find Marty Tankliff's. Let me see if I can. No, whoops. Marty Tankliff responded. Where is he? Oh, Marty Tankliff had responded. I don't know where the heck it is. All right, maybe it's down here under more. Well, anyway, Marty Tankliff had responded, or it might have been to the other one, but he basically said that it was irresponsible reporting, and that telling blatant lies like that in their newspapers, they eventually are going to hurt somebody or some group of people very badly, and they are going to probably find themselves on the expensive end of some really expensive litigation, or on the wrong end of some very expensive litigation. So he was actually pointing that out, and so it was very interesting. So I don't know. You guys can see my response here. And I basically said, well, I got to say it's rough being at Amanda Knox. What are these journalists using for brains? You clearly stated that you were keeping an open mind, yet they are desperate to twist and sensationalize. Keep fighting the good fight. And, so, I mean, this is what wrongfully convicted people kind of have to deal with, folks. This is very pointed. This was used because she is a wrongly convicted individual, and whoever wrote this article may possibly still believe that Amanda is guilty, despite the fact that the forensic evidence doesn't match, fit, doesn't work. It's a completely ridiculous thing to say, but some people still believe it. So, I mean, to use Foxy the way that they are was very much attacking her in the fact that she is, she was wrongfully convicted. And, so that's what wrongfully convicted have to deal with, That's what they have to deal with. And, the reason why, I've started to develop a reason, or, thought about a reason why, because like today, I had a little chat on with my boss once on the channel when we were out in the desert. Some of it was kind of garbled because of the wind out in the desert. So, some of you may not remember it or may not, but my boss is definitely one of those guys who he very much believes in law and order, tough on crime, and that sort of stuff. He's that way. Now, that doesn't mean in any way, I'm not saying in any way, that doesn't mean he doesn't have the capacity to appreciate a wrongful conviction when he realizes one's been made. And when he sees a show that shows him the clear proof that a conviction was wrongful, he is one who he recognizes it, and he won't shy away from it. So he's not like one of those really, 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 really extreme, ones, but he does definitely side with, law enforcement, DAs, and all those sort of things, like in a sense that he needs a lot to be able to believe they have done wrong. He needs considerable suggestion or proof that they've done something wrong, and because that's the way he is. Now, me personally, I'm more sit on the fact that the rules of how things are supposed to work were set up for a reason, and proper procedures and standard operating procedures and all those sort of things are set up for a reason, and they're supposed to be followed for a reason. And it's when we see officers failing to follow proper procedure or failing to do their job correctly, that's when things slip through the cracks, and actual dangerous individuals and guilty individuals slip through the cracks. And so that's what I marvel at sometimes with the people that are tough on crime, because they don't want to be hard. They don't want to be, they don't really want to do what's necessary to keep law enforcement completely honest. They have almost this attitude of, well, if they screw up a little bit, that's okay. If they throw a couple innocent people in, well, we'll forgive them. Right? And I think that's a bad attitude, because the rules were made a certain way to begin with for a reason. And the reason why you don't break the rules in an investigation, or as a law enforcement officer, or as a DA, is because if you do, if the person is convicted on the evidence in a fair trial, we don't want some screw up made by somebody to undo it on a technicality. You see, we want our law enforcement to be held to a higher standard, so that the convictions that we do get are going to be rightful. That's the idea of why these standard operating procedures and the rules that are developed for investigators and DAs and everybody are developed, because it's for a reason, to get to the truth and to get and for the process to do its job and to completely explore the matter, right? And that's what's supposed to happen, okay? But when you start getting cops who decide, investigators who decide they don't want to bother with anything over here, this kind of swabbing anything in this particular area, because they think maybe what they're going to find there they don't want, or like in the case of Scott Davis, okay, they had blood on a swab from the person they believed was the killer. They believed that the blood belonged to the killer, okay, and then they compared it to Scott, and it didn't match Scott. And as soon as it didn't match Scott, it was filed away in a cabinet, and was eventually lost before trial. And then Scott's defense attorneys didn't get a chance to have a DNA expert come in, get the profile, and enter it into like CODIS and see if they get a hit. These are the type of things that we can't have happening. When these things are happening, we're not looking for rightful convictions. Okay? To me it's not right. It's not right. And so I came in at the end of the day to the shop where my boss was, and we were talking, and I had the Steve Moore video playing on my phone, when I came in the back door. And so he could hear it, and he was listening, and he could hear some of the things being said. And then eventually he starts asking me questions, right? Because I'm sitting there filling out some paperwork before I leave, right? So he starts asking me questions. And, he basically said, so why does this guy believe, Brendan's innocent or whatever? I go, well, he believes Brendan's innocent because he's watched the confession, and in his opinion, it was all fed to him. The whole entire thing was fed to Brendan, and that sort of thing. And so I was explaining that to him, and he, I was explaining to him that it got to the part where Steve was talking about OJ. He was talking about the criminalist that took home a vial of blood with him. He put it in his pocket, and he had accidentally taken it home with him for one night and then put it into evidence the next day. And at trial, that ended up like nullifying that blood or whatever, right? And stuff. So he was talking about that. And so when OJ came up, my boss immediately then asks me, he goes, how do you feel about OJ? Right? And I told him, I said, well, I believe OJ's guilty. I mean, for me, there's no real doubt that OJ did it. I thought he was going to ask me why on that, but he wasn't. He didn't. He wasn't going that way. I was disappointed in the way he was going. He basically says, no, he goes, you're talking about when the system gets it wrong and a wrongfully convicted person has to suffer or whatever. He goes, but how do you feel about when the system doesn't get the right person? In other words, OJ. So he's trying to turn the tables on me by saying, why can somebody like OJ get away with it? And is that okay? Well, you have to, number one, consider the fact that OJ, number one, had a hell of a lot of money that most people don't have. Okay? That's one thing. He had the resources to hire the legal dream team. Okay? And so all of those top lawyers worked very, very hard on his case. The prosecution made some bad decisions. Number one, allowing Mark Furman to testify. They should have found someone else. They should have found somebody besides him, and Chris Darden knew it. And then Chris Darden should have never asked for OJ to try on the glove. Chris Darden should have never done that. So, I mean, there was mistakes made, and it's unfortunate. But OJ ended up showing his true colors later when he was basically trying to strong arm a robbery in Vegas, trying to steal back some of his own memorabilia. I think that he had sold. He was trying to steal back, or some odd thing, or there's always this, whatever. He claims it wasn't sold, or it was this and whatever. But he ended up going with a gun and doing all that, and he got convicted, for it and spent some time, right? As far as OJ goes, he's not like the average American. The average American doesn't have the resources he had. So, all right, let's look at what's going on in the chat here real quick. Law and disorder is much too prevalent in our society. Justice is no longer the norm. Yeah, they have a good reason for taking the easy way out, easy money for the prison system. Absolutely. Wouldn't that glove have shriveled up a bit and being so? Well, the leather would have kind of, and that's probably another reason why it didn't fit. Plus, OJ had a rubber glove on, so it's like that makes his hand even slightly thicker, trying to shove it into a wet leather glove, that had been wet with blood. And so, so anyways, that was all, that was the stuff that went bad for the prosecution. So, that's in the OJ case. So as that came up, that's what my boss came at me with. And so I was like, because his argument was a little bit crappy, because it's like he's assuming that I enjoy it when guilty people go free. It's almost, you understand, in the way that he was asking it, right? He was kind of like trying to brand me as being the reason why people like OJ go free. You're the reason why. You know what I mean? Because then he really betrayed himself. And he slipped. I think he realized he slipped because the tone of his conversation changed after he said this. But then he looked at me and he said, "Why do you do that stuff you do?" And I was just, dude, like in my mind, dude, a freaking explosion went off where I was like, you don't got the time, asshole. Nor do you have the fortitude to freaking listen. That was in my head. I didn't say that to him. It would have not been good probably if I had said it to him. But in my head, an explosion was going off of, like a lot of reasons why. But what I came back at him with was, you are making an assumption. When you say that to me, you are making an assumption that I want guilty people to go free. That's your assumption. And to ask me why I do what I do, I'm going to explain to you why. Because we have things coming out that are telling us what we're getting wrong. We have innocence data. We have the Innocence Project giving us the data, showing us exactly where commonly, time and time and time again, where the justice system gets it wrong. I go, I'm well informed. I go, but here's the thing. I go, I judge each situation on its merit. Okay? Somebody doesn't just walk up to me and go, "Hey, Erekose, here's a wrongfully convicted." And I just go, "Oh, yeah, here we go." Woo! No. I have to look at a situation. I have to dig in, and I have to see what's there. And I have to believe that they were wrongfully convicted, because I don't believe everybody's innocent. That's not my game. But that's what my boss was assuming. So when I said that, And when I made it clear to him how each situation should get judged on its merit, and that kind of turned it around on him a little bit, where I said, and he should be doing it too, suddenly his tone changed. Suddenly he wasn't trying to ask these questions that were like barbs, right? And when I say barbs, I'm not talking about Barb, Brendan's mom. I'm talking about when he was trying to maybe do little, jabs at me, right? With his initial questions. Then he finally realized, okay, and started asking me about Steve Moore. And started asking me about, him, his, how he feels about things, and and that sort of stuff. So then he, it became a completely different conversation, right? And as I've told you guys before, my boss, he's to the point where he's kind of seen enough that he is not happy with what went down with Brendan either. I mean, even he's able to see that, and even he feels that was wrong, or at least he doesn't like it. It doesn't sit well with him, right? So, but when it comes to Avery, that other side of him kicks in, and I don't fault him. I'm not mad at him for that. I'm just saying for you folks, that's who he is. That's just who he is, and it doesn't make him a bad person. It doesn't make him a bad person. It's just he has his certain sensibilities. He hasn't looked into it. He certainly doesn't know what I know. He certainly hasn't been watching my videos. So he's not up to speed. Okay, so his opinion at this point of Stephen is lacking because he knows nothing. All he knows is opinions probably that he's seen on social media and stuff like that as he's been surfing around social media, because I'm pretty sure he hasn't even watched Making a Murderer. I do know he watched Return to Manitowoc, the Dateline episode that they did about it. But I know he watched that in its entirety, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't watched Making a Murderer. So he hasn't even watched the documentaries, much less has he gone into the deeper dive into the documents like a lot of us have. So, but that's the way I choose to deal with people that come at me like that. Instead of getting huffy and pissy, I basically find that I let them talk until they make a claim that they can't support. Right? And so when he he opened himself up when he said, "Why do you do what you do?" Right? He opened himself up at that point, and that allowed me to shift the situation and explain to him that you have to judge each situation on its merits. And if I judge OJ on its merits, OJ's guilty. And if I judge me personally, when I judge the Avery case, Brendan is 100% innocent, and I believe Stephen was wrongfully convicted again. And so I go, and he goes, and he basically looks at me and he goes, "Well, I don't know about Avery. I don't know." And I almost said it to him, but I didn't. I almost said it to him. You're right. You don't know. Because all he's listening to is the chatter or little things that he's seen, little blips that he's seen on social media, or things maybe he's heard from friends when he's been visiting friends, and maybe their families have watched it and have talked about it. And so he's just gotten little buzz clips here and there, and he's watched the Dateline. And he thinks now he has enough information to say that he thinks, he has an opinion, a definitive opinion. His definitive opinion means diddly squat, because he hasn't researched diddly squat. So, maybe he will, or at least maybe he'll take the time to binge watch the documentary one weekend. I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, that's the way I deal with it, folks. It's better to kill people with kindness. Trolls are mean, and sometimes guilters are mean and stuff, but it's better not to let them bring you down to their level. So it's better for you to continue to talk to them respectfully and force them to come up to yours. Right? And if they can't come up to yours, toodaloo. So, all right, let's look at the comments a bit after I went off on my little soapbox there. Albert, Texas, partner of 18 years convicted of his death. No body. She got 26 years reduced to 23 on appeal. She is innocent. Others are trying to find the truth. There's a lot of cases out there. It certainly is. OJ won because Marsha Clark was it. Okay. No proof of a dead body. Missing, yes. Dead, can't prove it. Okay. Let's see. When that brought airplane blamed on a bird. Okay. Wouldn't that glove have shriveled up a bit after being soaked in blood? Yeah. That's why I started digging into it myself. When I saw Stephen's interview before his arrest, I knew in my heart he hadn't done anything. And then we were encouraged to put those parts back in the air. Just something in his eyes and voice. In order to have an informed opinion, you need to be informed. And that's true. That's absolutely true. So, I mean, that's where it was. But, I mean, it's just, I mean, but that's an example, folks. That's an example of how you can turn something, you know, when somebody is attacking your views on Avery Dassey, or even another case you might be interested in, right? To remember what I've said. Don't let the barbs and arrows get you. Wait for them to overstep. Just wait for them to overstep, and then you can point out the flaws in their reasoning, and you can force them to come up to your level instead of you going down to theirs. Right? I can't say that enough because it's, for me, a big deal. It's a big part of what I do here, and it's a big part of what I'm trying to teach the Avery Dassey community to do, because I don't want people out there acting like jerks and jackasses and threatening people involved in this and doing improper things like that. I want supporters of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey to have a reputation of being reasonable people who have well thought out opinions and can back up what they're saying with proof and paper, and documents or video or whatever it might be that it is that proves whatever it is that they believe. And that's what I believe. That's how I want members of the Avery Dassey community to be. And if we be that way, we will be seen that way. But if we have people out there acting like jerks and jackasses, we'll be seen as jerks and jackasses. So that's why this is a huge issue for me. It's why I keep trying to help to talk about this, about not lowering yourself. You know, I hope that what I've just said can be helpful. I realize it's easier said than done. I know it's difficult to sit and listen to somebody being a jerk to you, waiting and processing everything that their jerk mouth is saying, so that you can wait for the point where you can strike. Right? It sucks. But ultimately, in the end of that conversation, my boss found some new respect for me because he realized that his argument was weak, and he realized he wasn't convincing me with it, So, I mean, it dawned on him, and that's what we can all do. Wait. I mean, a big part of sometimes helping somebody to understand is letting them come to it on their own. You see, and that, again, easier said than done. But I allowed my boss to get there on his own. He wanted to be, pointed with his questions at first. He wanted to jab. But by the end, he was talking to me reasonably, and he was listening to what I was saying. So that That's the key. And that's how you open people's minds and get them to be, even if you don't get them to turn 100%, if you even get them to at least open up their mind just a tiny little bit to consider the possibility, you've won. I'm going to say that again. If you let them realize it on their own and you do all those things and allow the person to come to it on their own, it gives them that ability, that small little opening where they're willing to consider other possibilities. That is a win. And that's the way people need to think. Be classy. For Brendan Dassey. I mean, all these things you guys have all heard me say 100,000 times, but it's true. And I back it up with telling you the story I just told you. It's, important to remember to remain composed, and trust me, there's a lot of times with my boss that I lose my composure. It happens on occasion. But that's just because sometimes we're a little bit like brothers and we'll both start pushing each other's buttons, or I'll inadvertently push a button, he'll inadvertently push a button, and then we get into a macho match, so, it's not as bad nowadays, but occasionally we can get under each other's skin like that. And it was headed that way today, but I kept my composure and didn't let it get under my skin. And I was able to bring it to a resolution that I was pretty happy with. So my sister told me about MAM and said Brendan was innocent, but Steve guilty. Can't talk to her. She a lawyer, thinks she knows it all. Also thinks Amanda Knox is guilty. Yeah. Well, if you're a lawyer and you believe that Amanda Knox is guilty, I'll never hire you. How do you justify that? What forensic evidence? How do you tie any of the carnage that happened there to Amanda? I'm sorry. I don't see how that's possible. So, yeah, anyway. And also, since we're talking about Amanda real quick, also, when I was watching the documentary, the Amanda Knox documentary, folks, I gotta say, I almost wanted to laugh my ass off when I heard the Italian authorities were actually trying to say, because Amanda and Raffaele Solicito, I believe is how it said, anyway, that those two, because they were smoking pot, that it created this drug-fueled sex game that went wrong. On pot? On marijuana? What? Anyways, I thought that was funny. Honestly, in the Amanda Knox thing. Yeah, anyways, it was interesting. But there was another thing that she said in her podcast. After I'm done here, I'll get the link down below for everybody, but for her podcast, this recent one. But she was talking about Tiger King in the documentary, and then she was talking about the Amanda Knox documentary. And she was saying, everybody that was in my documentary, or the Amanda Knox documentary, the documentary filmmakers did all the interviews and everything. And before they ever, published, you might say, right? All of the people interviewed got a chance to see the final product before they released it. And everybody signed off on it. I thought that was interesting that everybody signed off on it. Because when you look at it, the reporter and the prosecutor come off pretty bad at certain points. There's the one point where the prosecutor's bragging about the fact that he loves the notoriety that the Amanda Knox case has given him in his home community. And he's professing how much he loves that status. That's not very ethical. I was just like, wow. But she was saying they had all signed off originally. They didn't and she offers the suggestion that she doesn't think that they all realized how their comments were going to come off, like how they were going to be perceived. She believes they didn't really process that. That was interesting. So I will leave the link to her podcast, the one I'm talking about. I'll get it down there after I'm done here. Actually, I might be able to do it now. Actually, let me do that right now. Here it is. Where is it? Boop. All right, so here's the link. Let's see if I go here. Okay, I'm just putting the link to her podcast for you guys to go check it out afterwards if you want to. You'll need to refresh. You'll just need to hit refresh real quick for it to pop up in the description down below in just a second. Okay. Hold on, almost. Okay. You should be able to refresh now and you'll see a link in the description below. So, all right. Hey, Thomas, how's it going, buddy? Ooh, starting to get a little hot in here. How's it going, Jerome? Yeah, they had and Amanda got some. It's pretty wild what happened there in Italy. I mean, I think I talked about. I did a video before, talking a bit about it. But I mean, it's just, I'm obviously, because I'm talking to her still. I mean, I'm planning to have her on at some point. So I haven't really done I haven't gone through her case yet. And done like a me just going through the timeline of where I felt problems were and what things stuck out to me. But maybe one of these days. How's it going, Hugh? What's up, buddy? So I mean, and now talking about all this stuff, the wrongfully convicted, the guys like, Ricky Kidd, Jason Strong, and Adam Brazil, and Amanda Knox, right? Others like Devontae Sanford, Valentino Dixon, John Bunn, Gabrielle, I forgot the other guy. There's so many. I mean, there's way too many. There's so many wrongfully convicted, out there. But I mean, those are some of the ones whose stories I've checked out and who I've read about and who I've looked into a little bit. And their stories are, amazing. And that leads me to talking about what's coming up here that Mr. Hodnott and I and some others are planning for October. So in October, basically wrongful conviction day is October 2nd. So that's a Friday. It just so happens it's a Friday, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to 3 times why you interviewed the dog trainer. Is this a burning question? I'm not going to talk about it. So anyway, Rudy Getty was reportedly a police informant. If that's true, maybe a factor in what happened to Amanda. That's true. That could be. Gregory Allen effect strikes again, yeah. I understand, Julie. No, I understand. So on October 2nd, which happens to be a Friday, it's wrongful conviction day, and basically that night, Friday night, we're looking to put together another live streaming event, and that way this one could be more towards the end of the year, so and then that can kind of balance out with Mammothon, right? So this one though is going to be mainly focusing on the wrongfully convicted. So the idea is to get people who've been exonerated on to talk about their cases and things like that, and to educate people, and give people a place to tune in and get educated about how these types of things happen and that sort of stuff. So, yep, there's a lot of cases out there that folks can look into. There's some out there but there's obviously, people out there who have been exonerated, and there are some out there who still need to be. Scott Davis, for instance. And I refer everybody to my Scott Davis video. So what we're looking to do is put together this little event for the end of the year, and I hope everybody kind of gets on board with it, because a big part of learning how to be an effective supporter of Avery Dassey and pointing out the problems with the cases and wrongful convictions in general is to understand how wrongful convictions happen, and to get a better understanding by getting familiar with as many of them as possible, right? And so that's my hope for what the wrongful conviction day 48-hour streaming event can potentially bring, is to give people a place to sit down in one weekend and get a lot of education about how wrongful convictions happen. And so that's my hope, and I'm looking forward to it, and I do hope everybody gets as excited about it as they do about Mammothon, because it's most likely going to have a lot of the same YouTubers, right? And I know, like, Andrew has started to branch into new cases himself. I know, he's looking at. I know one case he's looking into. I think he's actually looking into two. Actually, Thomas is here. He could tell us, but I know Andrew's starting to branch into some other cases as well. Pretty much everybody is. I mean, obviously you got Ripper who follows MAM, but he's also hot on the trail of Carol Baskins, trying to figure out what happened to Don Lewis, and so we all got other things. Like I have Scott Davis and some others. It's just, yeah, we all need to be aware of these things, and so hopefully that's what this weekend will do. This weekend in October, wrongful conviction day weekend. That's the name. That's the working name for now. That's the working title for now. But that's kind of what we're looking at. So that's where we're headed. I was really inspired to do this streaming event because of all of the really, really great guests on Mammothon, the wrongfully convicted gentlemen who were telling their stories. I was pretty moved, and I think a weekend where we hear a lot more stories like that and about that would be a good thing. So, John, I answered you. Sorry. I'm glad. Thomas Myrtle. Andrew and I are pursuing the Sam Sharkus, right? Suggests otherwise, right? And then also the case, right? It's Andrew that talks about the case where there was the 8 dead women and that sort of stuff that he was looking into. All right. So there's also another reason, John, why I'm not going to answer you. So I just right now he was. You want an answer, John? Fine, you get your answer, John. He was on because he understands cadaver dogs and he understands scent dogs and he can explain them. Is that good enough reason? I honestly can't fathom why you're asking me. I don't know what you're asking me for. So because he knows about that stuff? I mean, I don't know. Your question is a little strange. Jefferson Davis 8. Right, there you go. That was the one I was thinking. Yeah, that one sounds pretty trippy. And with the involvement of potentials, CIs and things like that. So hopefully everybody's going to be looking forward to that event coming up in October. I think it's great because it's something else to look forward to in between, now and, April of next year, the end of April next year. So, they're here because I'm sorry if I misperceived your questions there, John, but I mean, yeah, they're here because they can offer useful information about how these tracking dogs work and that sort of stuff. Plus, Zoe's really cool. Zoe's a really cool dog, so I love having Zoe on, and Jeff's not bad either. So, anyways, no. Hey, look, I encourage everybody to go and donate to the Utah Rescue Dogs. Sorry, after I'm done here, I'll make sure I get those links down below. But go over and help, Jeff and Zoe out. They can use that over there. So I mean, it's just great. I mean, since you brought it up, I was going to wrap up, but since you brought up the dog handling, I'll just go ahead and say, yesterday, Jeff was on with the Armchair Detective. I don't know if you guys know who that is. The Armchair Detective is a YouTuber who kind of does his own Armchair Detective little investigations and stuff. So yesterday, he was talking about the Chris Watts case and stuff. And so Jeff had been there watching his podcast, or his YouTube. And he was watching it, and eventually him and his guest got to talking about cadaver dogs. Well, eventually his guest's connection got really bad, and there was a lot of noise coming through, so they ended up cutting that off. So when his guest left, he ended up sending the link to Jeff to get Jeff on, and so Jeff ended up coming on with him for like another 2 hours. So I ended up finding out about it and went over and started talking. And so it was pretty amazing because the Armchair Detective was asking about all the various things about, he was asking about scent dogs and tracking dogs and cadaver dogs. And so eventually I started firing questions out there, that I, thought, the people in the chat would be shocked by the answers, like, for instance, what animal best simulates human remains, which most people always want to answer pig, right? They always want to say pig, because that's what we're told, because that's what kind of was used for a long time, because people figured that was the right thing. But when science came in and got involved and actually went in and measured the compounds coming off of a pig and measured the compounds coming off of a piece of chicken, they actually found out that a chicken had more of the same, more shared volatile organic compounds that share with humans, that we have the same than pigs have with humans. So interesting. So I set that question up for him to be able to answer and stuff. And so just in that chat, I think there was 3 or 4 of his people that said, that came back and said, Erekose, I'm making murder. I just subbed. It was funny. So, we got to talking about the Avery case a little bit, and, Armchair Detective was talking about, having Jeff on and potentially maybe even me to talk about the Avery case and Avery Dassey cases at some point. So I thought that was that was potentially fun. So that was going on yesterday. I mean, that's, Jeff's a pretty cool guy, and he actually has pretty obvious he has a pretty severe interest in seeing the wheels of justice, rolling properly, and he has a vested interest in justice. It's pretty clear, because he's. I mean, he doesn't have to be coming onto YouTube and helping to inform people like me or Armchair Detective or anybody else, right? Linda Kay, I believe I heard he's going to be on Linda Kay soon. So you know what I mean? But I mean, he doesn't have to do that, but he does. So he's a really, really nice guy. He's a great guy. I encourage everybody to go over and donate to the Utah, search and rescue, his little, organization, which I will leave links for down below the video as soon as I'm done here. So they'll take within about 5 minutes of this video being over. We should be able to, you should be able to get the links. Okay, let's see here. What are you guys talking about? Why on earth would be great if Steve and Brendan are out and free by this time next year? You got hot? Yeah, it is hot. I'm sweating a bit. Let's see here. Oh, it'd be better tomorrow. Ha ha ha. Definitely, Julie, but remember who Casey's dealing with. Actually didn't know there were private organizations offering such resources. Well, I don't. Are you referring to Utah Search and Rescue Dogs? I think it's an organization run by multiple. I don't think it's just his. I say his because, anyway, I don't mean like it's all him. I just mean like the organization he works with. There, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's they just raise money to be able to, that's what they're basically raised money for, is to be able to fund their activity of going out and, mainly what they do is a lot of like search and rescue on when the snow and avalanches happen and things like that. They end up on a lot of those, and that type of stuff. So, that's what they do, and so it helps fund them in being able to do those things. So. All right, folks, that's about all I had to say for today. Just remember how difficult it is, for the wrongfully convicted and the stuff that they have to kind of deal with, kind of being in that limbo between guilt and innocence. Because once you've been convicted, you can never really get back. Or at least it's very difficult to get back to to the same as it was before you were wrongfully convicted, to getting back to that level of innocence. It's always going to be a bit difficult for that. So I think it was pretty shameful of those newspapers using Amanda's notoriety and celebrity there to in such a negative way, calling her Foxy, or the use of the word Foxy. No, that's pretty low. That's pretty low. And it's like I said, they're not representing what she said properly or truthfully. Because as you guys will be able to see down there, if you go down in the description, there's a link there to her podcast. It's about 8 or 9 minutes. And you'll see nowhere in there does she say Carol Baskin is innocent. She didn't say that. She never says it. Never once. She never says Carol Baskin is not guilty. She never says any of those things. She just says she doesn't want to rush to judgment, but she is concerned about the same things we're all concerned about. And they wanted to twist her words. And that's especially with her being such a famous, in a sense, because of her documentary, wrongfully convicted person, the press does things like this, and and it sucks to be that popular and to be stuck in that limbo, half between innocence and guilt, So it's tough, and it's tough for the guys like Ricky Kidd, Jason Strong, and Adam Brazil. It's tough for them, and they don't have that notoriety that Amanda has, and it's tough for them in their own little communities where they live, where some of the people still believe and hold on to some of that crap that they saw back in the media years ago. And there's just, what can you do, right? So. So, all right. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you everybody for being here. Julie, Shaz, John, Jamie, you were here earlier. Thomas, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I know we only had about 25 people for this one, but what are you going to do? I think this is an important subject, and I do hope eventually I am going to be able to make a video like this and talk about these topics, or at least these issues, maybe if not these topics, these issues again, and hopefully get a video where a lot more people are paying attention, because folks, we do need to educate ourselves more on other wrongful convictions, to where we know all of the damn ways that the system goes wrong, and the way that wrongful convictions tend to happen commonly because of certain practices, and to continue to expose those practices. That's what we got to do. We got to make ourselves aware of these things. I do hope that as I make more and more videos like this one focusing on wrongfully convicted, not just Stephen and Brendan, that more and more people will hopefully get that. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to make videos about Stephen and Brendan. I'm never going to stop caring about Stephen and Brendan. That's never going to happen. So there will always be content about Stephen and Brendan here. But I just want to impress upon everybody how serious I am, that it's important to educate yourself about other wrongful convictions besides Stephen and Brendan's. It's important, and so I can't say it enough. All righty. It was good to see everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Hugh, if you're still out there, we'll see you, buddy. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.